Hey guys, happy Monday. I just wanted to kind of go through a couple things for the week and next week with you. It's week 9. So we are, since this semester is actually a little bit shorter than 18 weeks because we started later, we are more than halfway through the semester. Um, so here's what we've got. We're going to look at our last poem this week, and that poem is Dulce et Decorum Est. You're going to look at that with your group. I'll talk about that some more here in just a minute. And then next week, you're going to do some writing over that poem, and then we will be done with poetry. And then you also have a root words quiz to be getting ready for next Monday and Tuesday during your class period again, and your reading journal that is due this week as well. So let's go ahead and look at the weekly agenda planner. First, make sure you have everything turned in that was due yesterday, Sunday, October 18th. The next thing is that you're going to read, annotate, and make sketch notes with your group over the poem Dulce et Decorum Est. And that is getting you ready for writing about it next week, writing about that poem next week. So let's look at how you're going to do these sketch notes with your group. This is typically something that I do in class. And so it is a little bit different to be, doing this virtually where you're not together. Let me look at this another way because it's not showing the whole screen to you. It's probably an error on my part. So how are we going to approach this since you're not together and you can't, work with each other in the classroom physically to do your sketch notes. So we'll talk about that. But the poem, first of all, it's important to know some background here about Wilfred Owen, who wrote the poem. He is thought to be the best British World War I poet. I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but if you think about the fact that he was only 25 when he was killed and he's thought to be the best British World War I poet, that says a lot about his poetry. He only published 5 poems also because of his short lifetime. So again, or actually, I guess there were 7 more that came out later. It just says a lot about the quality of his writing and the reputation that he has when he does not have, a huge body of written work that people are judging his writing on. Okay, so I want you to read the poem. I really want you to do all of this with your group. And I know a lot of times we approach group work as like, this is so we can make it, each of us has less to do. And that is understandable. But for poetry and literature, I really like you working together because you all have different ways of approaching things, different ways of looking at literature. And I want you to look at it with other perspectives in mind and see what others might be seeing when they read it that you're not seeing. And so I really want it to serve as a discussion more than just let's break up the work and be done. Okay, so the poem is here and there's an audio reading of the poem. It's a pretty good reading of it, so you could use that. And you'll notice right off the bat, it's full of imagery. And I want you to think about the title of the poem. Dulce et Decorum Est is in the title, and it's also mentioned at the end as well. So think about the beginning and the end. What's the significance of him repeating that? And also, it's in Latin. Think about, is there significance to why it's in Latin? Why didn't he just write it in English? He speaks English, and the rest of the poem is all in English. So why did he choose Latin for those words? You might think about that. You'll really need to familiarize yourself with, if you're not already, which you might be, with World War II and some of the, I guess I'll call it technology or techniques, trench warfare and weapons and things like that from World War II that were unique, because those are things that he refers to in the poem, and you'll miss them. You'll miss those references if you don't have the context of warfare during World War II and what it was like. I'd like you to TP cast the poem. I'm not looking for you to turn it in. I just think it's a really good basic way to look at it before you move on to answering questions and analyzing it more in depth. It just kind of forces you to take note of things that you might not otherwise. Talk with your group about what do you think the theme from the text is. And remember, the theme is more than just warfare. What does he have to say about warfare? That's what the theme is. It's more than just an idea or a topic or a concept. It's his commentary on that. What's his purpose, or what is he saying about warfare? Okay, so now we're going to move on to sketch and text. So you've read the poem and you're going to look at it more closely with your group and break it down into sketch and text annotations. Your objective is to create insightful, creative annotations, noting important textual features, inferences, etc. So again, we're still looking at how. How does the author employ literary techniques to communicate the horrors of war? So how does he accomplish it? You've got to look at his writing specifically. And this is different than AP World, if you're taking that, where you're not supposed to be quoting the text. I'm asking you specifically to quote the text and tell me how his words communicate his theme or his tone, how he communicates about the horrors of war. So there are 2 videos here to watch about sketch notes. They're really short. Watch those with your group. It talks about what sketchnoting is and why it's important, how it can help you understand things. This is an example of a sketch note from the book, The Hate U Give. Obviously, you're not doing a whole book, so it'll be different. But you can see, if you've read the book, that you know some things that happened in it. So there's a police car, there's a fire, tennis shoes. So think of symbols and icons and things like that from the poem that you could pull out and sketch. This is, again, if you were doing this in the classroom with your group or together with your group, you can see the little white pieces of paper. Those are places where students have found a piece of the text that they're writing about. So they had a copy of the poem, and then some of them chose to cut it up, which I think was wise, just to give them space to write about things. So here is a soldier pulling someone who has died in combat on the wagon. And there's a part written about that in the poem. And then here's one with a gas mask. He talks about gas. So that's what you're sketching. And I don't want you to feel like you have to be so literal as to sketch only the things that are in the poem. You'll notice, where is it here? Think about, this is where I said you need to be familiar with World War I. I did say World War II earlier, World War I. And it would be helpful for you to research how many people died and how many casualties there were, not just deaths. It's a huge number. You have a little information on Wilfred Owen. You could find more on him. Looking at the weapons introduced during World War I will help you with the context of the things he writes about, and it can also help you with what you might sketch about. The same thing goes for trench warfare tactics. So those are some things that would be really good for you to get just a little bit of context, a little background knowledge that you might be able to use in your sketch notes. Okay, so you're not drawing together like this one in the classroom. You're going to take what you might have done here and put it into a Prezi. So for example, this part right here might be the little white piece of paper quote, a couple lines from the poem or a line from the poem. And then maybe maybe this is the poem as a whole. And then you have out here going to a couple lines, and then maybe you have another arrow going out to an illustration for those lines and maybe some explanation of those lines. So that's why I think Prezi is a good tool to use, because you can pull either the whole poem or a stanza from the poem and break it down into these small pieces, and add your sketch notes or other commentary that you want to add to it. You do not have to use Prezi if you have another tool in mind. I do not want you to use Google Slides because I want you to use something that's a little more interactive and that where we can see it all kind of like out on one screen. Okay, so here are some recommendations from me. I've already gone over some of these things. Yes, it does need to be, your illustrations do need to be sketched by hand or drawn by hand, not digital. So work with your group, who's going to draw what. It's okay if they are stick figures as long as you put effort into them and they are neat and I can tell what they are. Don't feel like you have to be an artist. And then you need to, establish who's going to do what. So who's going to organize all of the Prezi, who's going to post Prezi. Here's what I don't recommend because I saw this in some of your group work last time. I don't recommend you like breaking up. You do stanza 1, you do stanza 2 and things like that because you need to have a cohesive interpretation of the poem as a group. And if you break it up, it may not be cohesive. And so you need to all agree on what each line and stanza is about and then figure out who's going to do the illustrating or whatever, how you're going to break it up after you all agree. At the end, what you're going to turn in is one group member is going to turn in the link to your Prezi. Make sure it's a link that I can view. It's not private or something like that. And then the rest of the group, everyone will turn in a private comment that says who was in your group, who you worked with, who from your group turned it in, and what your part was in getting it done. What did you contribute to the finished product? You've got slides here to really help you through each stanza. Some specific literary techniques to note that I know are very prevalent in this poem. Remember, this came up also in some of the things I've been reading. Diction is the individual word choice. So when you choose to write about diction or find an example of diction, it needs to be one word that made an impact in the poem. And so it shouldn't be a whole phrase or a line or anything. It should just be one word that was impactful. One word at a time. I mean, it can be, 5 words, but they need to all be individual. Think about the point of view. That's important in this poem. Lots of sensory details. Think about the sentence structure. That's what syntax is sentence structure. Think about long sentences, short sentences, any unusual punctuation or repetitive punctuation or anything like that. That's what you're looking for syntax. Okay, so then I give you some tips on each stanza, what you should be looking at and what you could sketch about, what you could write about and what you could sketch about. So there's stanza 1. Here's some things for stanza 2 and 3. Here's some for stanza 4. And then here's some more in-depth, what to do with diction. I already said, it's individual words, but, it should be more than one individual word, but it needs to be words that stand alone, not in the middle of a phrase. Here's some stuff on figurative language. These are just kind of questions to help you when you identify those things. Now what? What do I do with it? Now that I've identified some words that stand out, or now that I've identified a metaphor or personification, what do I do with it? So these are kind of some things to help you think through those. More of the same, like here's some for imagery. Okay, don't worry about anything past this slide. The multiple choice, the writing, that will all come later. Okay, what else do we have for this week? We also have, here's also a Word document. I'm sorry, Google Doc, not a Word doc, a Google Doc of the poem if you wish to make a copy and annotate in there with your group or whatever if you want to copy and paste from it into your Prezi or whatever, you can use that. You do have root words next week. Again, it will be during class, so make sure to put a reminder you have class next Monday and Tuesday, both for your quiz and to do your Dulce et Decorum Est writing. And then you've got a Quizlet here that will help you study for set 3 test or quiz. You really don't have anything to turn in. I just changed it to an assignment instead of materials because I think it'll pop up on your due dates better as an assignment. So that's why I changed that. There's nothing to turn in though. Here's the agenda and planner, which we were already looking at. We'll go back to that in a second. And your reading journal. Okay, back to this that we were looking at. Okay, please put on your calendar, on your planner, wherever you need to put it, with a reminder, with a notification that you have class next week on Monday or Tuesday for English. And you should expect to be there the whole class period because you're taking a quiz and you're doing writing over a Dulce et Decorum Est. Don't forget you have your journal entry due this week. I did change that to an assignment also instead of a question. Again, trying to make sure it pops up in your to-do lists and in your assignment lists and things like that instead of posting it as a question. We'll see if that helps. I'm still having reading conferences. Make sure that you're attending that. Some of you are repeatedly missing it and you're repeatedly getting counted absent. Make sure you're getting ready for root words. Already said that. The one thing I did add out here for independent reading, some of you are ready for another book and you don't know where to start looking. So I've posted some things that I hope will help you. Goodreads is a great resource. If you're looking for a book, it'll suggest things and give you reviews of things that are similar to what you've read before or things that you've liked in the past. The Bentonville Public Library, you can access their database. And here are the instructions for how to do that. And you can use Sora by Overdrive, and it will give you audiobooks and digital books, ebooks and audiobooks that you can access remotely. The app is supposedly pretty user-friendly. And so Sora by Overdrive through the Bentonville Public Library is a great resource, especially if you're unable. I don't want you to feel like you need to go buy books or anything, but if you're unable to get to your school library or get to the public library, there's great digital resources. And then there's links also to the BHS and West libraries where you can search what books they have. So some good resources here if you're looking for a book to read. That is it for this week, and this went on much longer than I intended it to, but I hope you guys are having a good week. I hope you feel like you were able to either catch up over the long weekend if you needed to catch up, or you were able to just relax because you were already caught up. So I hope that the long weekend was good for you, and I hope you have a great week. And remember, I will see you in class next Monday and Tuesday in our Google Meet.